God bless you. Welcome to another day. Welcome to another time in which we can share together the words of life. And I trust that you have been encouraged. And I must apologize, one for my internet connections. I have no control over that, but I don't know what's going on. It could be my well worn studio equipment here. I may have to look to see if I can get a better one. And two, and which to me is just or just as important, is that on these sessions I really do not go into depth. I don't go into depth because I will never move from these things. I wouldn't reach Isaiah if I went into depth into any part of scripture. I'm leaving that to you, because even in our last session, looking at the 4 points that I was stressing, each point, there's a lot more that could be said about these areas, and which are areas I believe that surrounds us even in our world today, in our church, in our families, in our lives. We are affected every day by these 4 areas and many, many more. So I'm not doing real justice to any part of scripture at all. I'm the least of you all. I know that there are many more very much inspired preachers, teachers, people that could really bring out the areas that I am touching on, and you could in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really bring out much more than what I am doing. But it's necessary for me to point these things out so that at least you, in your time, in your study time, as you prepare to preach, as you prepare to teach, even in your own daily living, in your lifestyles, that you could really be a better man, be a better woman, be a better girl, a better boy, a better husband, a better wife, that we could also influence the world that we are in. Yes, influence the community, influence the city, your workplace, wherever that is, because the Lord is coming soon. The Lord is coming soon. We just look at the signs of the times in various areas. And if you've noticed, I have not really touched much on what's happening in the world today. Look what is happening in Iran. Look what is happening right there in the Middle East. Look at what is happening in the Ukraine, Russia, in Europe. I could a whole day, and I know that I can't really. There's a lot. I try to keep it as much informed as I can in these areas for me. But there are channels out there. There are channels out there. I know all channels probably are not good, and some are very. I have found some channels on YouTube, on the social media websites that are extremely, extremely informative. I wish I was like some of these guys, some of these women who look at the times, and they just seem to be so on point, because they not only talk from the top of their heads, but they show you, they take the time to show you, whoever's interested in the scripture, as far as I'm concerned. And obviously we're dealing with men, we're dealing with human beings. So yes, there will be a degree of error. Let me say that there will always be a degree of error in whatever we say, in whatever is being said. But they try. I see the sincerity of their time and of their study, of trying to look at the scriptures in tandem to what's happening in the world, to bring out the truth and to make the things as clear as possible. There is so much going on in our world. Believe me, The Lord is coming. I don't really have time to waste with anybody, to waste on any particular thing. And sometimes I want to believe that the church, and when I say the church again, I'm not talking about my church only. I'm not talking about my church in particular. I'm talking about the church worldwide. Yeah, we are asleep. I'll be as controversial as that. I could be a lot more, but I'll just say that. I believe we are asleep. We are not mentioning, we are not tackling the things that we need to. We are just concentrating on our own personal, when I say personal, probably organizational things that we think we need to look at. And we're not doing what we are being tasked to do by God. Anyway, I suppose I've stepped into some very troubled, heated waters, and a lot could be said. But I don't believe, my friends, this is the time now for us to be selfish and for us to look at designs just to enhance ourselves and our individual churches and our own individual ministries and organizations. I don't believe that this now is the time. God is wanting us to mention and to make mention of his word in relation to what is happening in our world today, to warn men and to tell the people, to tell our families, our children, to tell our neighbors, our communities, to be an evangelist. Each and every one of us needs to be an evangelist. There seems to be a lot of bishops, archbishops, popes being ordained, and not enough evangelists. There needs to be evangelists, but we don't seem to have any. Anyway, let me get off that hobby horse for now. This particular section is looking at the sudden end of the oppressor. The sudden end of the oppressor. The one before was the sins of the oppressor. But now God is foretelling the sudden end of the oppressor. He's not telling only his people, but he's speaking very broadly now. God is addressing everybody, anybody that would hear him. God is talking to them. God's talking to us today. Anybody that will hear him, who really sees the need, the urgency of hearing the voice, understanding the voice, and following the voice of God. Obeying, being obedient to the voice of God. Yes, we need to be obedient. God is speaking to all. The sudden end of the oppressor. Now I'm going to read the 3 verses, 9, 10, and 11 of the 47th chapter of the Gospel of Isaiah. Again, you must also open up your heart and your mind, especially to recognize that Paul, or what Paul has said. Many of you have read, I make mention of this all the time, many of you have read the Pauline epistles over and over and over. You read them because you preach them, you teach them, you design your lessons from them. So you know exactly what Paul is saying. You can reel off whole chapters or passages or verses of scripture from the Pauline epistles. So you know exactly what Paul was saying. Now, here you can hear Paul taking out particular scriptures. I'm not going to tell you whether it's in his in Ephesians, Galatians, or down in Thessalonians, in the Corinthians. I'm going to say Corinthians, or even in the church in Colossus. I'm getting tongue-tied here. But Paul is really, really very much entwined here, even though he comes hundreds of years later. But Paul has read Isaiah, and he has had to use some of the very scriptures, I believe. He doesn't say in the Pauline epistles, Isaiah says. You'll never see that. I have not seen it. It is said that there are certain passages or books that have been hidden from us. Okay, that's fine. Let them say what they want to say. But what we have at this moment, there's nothing there to say that Paul says, Isaiah says, and he quotes Isaiah. No, but you get the spirit of Isaiah very much in the very text of what Paul is communicating to the early church. So let's read, if you would like to read together. I'm reading from the King James Version. It says here, verse 9, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, and the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. Verse 10, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me. Verse 11, therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. And mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Now, if you allow me to, I want to read something. It's from a book that I have here. I mainly use it, but I've got other resources also that I use. And the Preacher's Outline, I'm sure many of you know that. It's a very well-known resource. And many of my friends and many other theologians and preachers that I know use this book. So let me just read from what the theologians have said here. I think it's very useful for us. It says here, in one night's time, the city of Babylon would be conquered by Darius, the king of the Medo-Persian Empire. And we read this in the book of Daniel, notably chapter 5 of Daniel. Furthermore, the conquest would happen without a battle. I have made mention of that. There was no battle. There wasn't a sword. I don't think they had guns there, but not a gun was fired. Not a bullet was heard in that night when Babylon was overrun by the Medes and Persians. The Babylonian misplaced security would collapse and be lost in one day. What the people had formerly thought impossible would take place. Both the loss of children and women becoming widows. Within a single night, the citizens of Babylon would lose their families and all hope for the future. Where they had placed their trust in the world was in the world of the occult, that is sorcery, enchantments, witchcraft, physics, divinations, and astrology. Where are we in the world today? Where would you place our society, our world, wherever you are? Where would you place our world in amongst of all those headings I've mentioned? Astrology, divinations, physics, witchcraft, enchantment, sorcery. All of that is in operation today. All of that in our own city, in your city. And I'm hearing things, terrible things. I'm listening of it. There's some things happening in our world, in the very country that I am in. There are things happening that is absolutely horrendous. And the thing about it is that I don't think we're sensitive enough to recognize that the devil is at work. The oppressor is at work. If we are as spiritual as we say we are, and we are children of the Most High, don't you think that we should be sensitive enough to address these things? But I don't think we are, because we're not addressing. Nobody's saying anything. Well, I won't say nobody. Forgive me if I am, um, you know, just forgive me. But there are things, my friends, that's going on in our world, in our cities, in our communities, and if we are sensitive enough to recognize and to know that the oppressor is right next door to us, we're living so comfortable. Anyway, let me continue reading here, because all of that what I said was not in this was not in this paragraph of what I'm reading. Within a single night, the citizens of Babylon would lose everything. But in the hour of need, the world of the occult would fail the Babylonians. For the occult is merely another counterfeit religion. The occult, divination. Now we can say all of these things work. Listen, they work because God allows them to work at certain times, but they are false religions. Yes, they are counterfeit religion. There's only, if I can say, one religion. There's only one God, and that is the Creator. It is a phony science that is utterly useless in facing the terrible enemies of and hardships of life. The oppressor's trust in the world of the occult would collapse in their desperate hour of need. So all those people, the governments, all what we're seeing in our world today that you are afraid of, that I am afraid of, that we seem to fear, one of these days, in the hour of need, of their need, all of that is going to fail. What we have to realize, my friends, if we knew that their power, that their strength, that all that they claim to be will fail, if we really believe that, then we wouldn't be running with our tails between our legs. We wouldn't be doing that, because we know that God will destroy the oppressor. So there are 3 points here. The oppressor's false security, that's one. Number 2, the oppressor's wickedness would fail, and the oppressor's end would be disastrous. And that is what God has said, told Israel to tell Judah, to tell God's people, and even the oppressor themselves, even before they really came on the scene. That is why Isaiah here is so prophetic. Out of all the prophets, and I'm not saying that Isaiah is more important than Daniel or Amos or Joel or Zechariah. No, they all have their importance, just like the organs within our bodies. They all are important. No one organ is more important than the other. But let me say, there's a big but here, or not. But Isaiah at this point, he is so prophetic, so very prophetic, not only for his day and for another 150 years in the future from his point, and even another 700 years to prophesying of the coming servant, the coming Messiah. But he is also very prophetic for our day, for our time right now, and the Lord tarries even for the generation after you and me. That is how prophetic. If we just had the book of Isaiah as the only book to preach from, if we knew how to preach, we could preach from the book of Isaiah alone. But you see, sometimes we judge preachers on how well preachers put the scriptures together. A little bit from Genesis and mix it with Isaiah, and then you get Isaiah and mix a little bit with Zechariah, and then get a little bit from John, and then you go down to the letters that Paul wrote, and you put it together, and we judge men by how well we orchestrate the books and the verses together, and we put it together, and we become inspired and begin to hoop and holler, as the Americans would say. But my friends, if we could preach, if I could preach, and I don't think I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I'm a preacher. Probably I do a lot of shouting and such. But if I could preach this, if I could preach, I'd really want to preach like Isaiah. If Isaiah was alive, if I could go back, I would sit at his feet. I would sit and listen to him, watch him, hear him, how God would communicate his word to Isaiah. That word. And I know that it is not just based on Isaiah. Isaiah just availed himself, just made himself available really to be used of God. How many of us is ready to be used of God? How many of us? May the Lord bless you. May the Lord bless you. Remember the sudden end of the oppressor. There is going to be a sudden end. And God said that. He said in verse 11, therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. God is going to bring sudden death in a moment amongst the oppressor. When the oppressor thinks not, God is going to destroy them, because what they have trusted in, what they have placed their strength or placed their hope in will fail. But we who put our trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion. May God bless you. Have a great day. And we'll see you tomorrow to tackle the very last portion of Isaiah chapter 47. God bless you.